Hey guys, welcome back to Cap Views. So today I'm going to be talking about the possibility of the Legacy I Know What You Did Last Summer film that may be coming up, starring, of course, the lovely Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr. coming back for a third film, which will be, I guess, a Legacy sequel, which is what they call it now. So obviously, I feel like this is coming off the heels of Scream, being sort of rebooted in a sense, passing the torch, bringing back the OGs, killing the OGs, and I feel like this is sort of following in those footsteps. So I feel like a lot of franchises are coming back now and either rebooting or bringing back OGs and trying to bring in new people, and I feel like that's a very common theme now for a lot of these horror franchises that we've known and loved for many years, and it's a 50-50 whether it turns out good or not. Personally, with Scream 5, I didn't like Scream 5. I don't like the new kids on the block. I wanted to see the OGs. And then at the same time, there are definitely times where you watch these films or you see trailers for something that's coming up and you're like, maybe you should have just stopped because these actors are looking a bit older, and obviously, time passes, and for me personally, sometimes I watch these trailers and I'm just like, you should have just left it alone and left that greatness where it was in that era and that film and whatever it was, just leave it alone. And then other times I'm like, man, I wish we had a sequel. But like waiting 20 years to do that isn't always the best idea in my opinion. So, do I think this is a good idea? Look, you guys know if you've watched my channel, I Know What You Did Last Summer is my favorite film, horror wise. It's up there. It's like in my it's a toss up between that film and probably Scream as my favorite like horror franchise uh film. And honestly, I Know What You Did Last Summer always wins out over Scream only because I love the cast. I was a big fan of I'm still a fan of Sarah Michelle Gellar. She did that film I think when she was doing season 2 of Buffy, I guess. I like Jennifer Love Hewitt. I saw her in quite a few films back in the 90s, early 2000s. Um, I liked Freddie Prinze Jr. a lot. He was in She's All That, which is one of my favorite rom coms. It was a great film, and he was in a few actually, so it was pretty cool. Ironically, with like one of them, I think was with Matthew Lillard. So there were these certain actors in that time period: Nev Campbell, Sarah Michelle, Freddie Prinze, Matthew Lillard. Actors like this where you just saw them circulating sort of everywhere, and you'd see them popping up in these films. And horror films back then in the 90s were such a big thing. And you saw these actors appearing in all these films. Even like Joshua Jackson in Urban Legends, he came off Dawson's Creek. Jennifer Love Hewitt came off of I think it was 90210. Sarah Michelle, like it's just, they all did these films, and some of them took and some of them didn't so much. But if you look back at these films, maybe now people won't really appreciate the horror classics that they were back then. And maybe they're not masterpieces to certain people, but for me, as I've said many times, I loved those films back then. I grew up, I'm a 90s baby, like basically. Like, I'm not, but like, that's how I feel because I grew up in the 90s, really, and that was my era. I wish I could go back. Everything was fantastic. I loved everything about the 90s and early 2000s. So, as far as this film is concerned, am I excited for it? Hell yes. I Know What You Did Last Summer coming back again. And no, let's just ignore that. So we had I Know What You Did Last Summer, the original. We had I Still Know What You Did Last Summer when we were on the island with Jack Black and Brandy. And I really liked that film. I know people are like, the sequel's always really shitty, but I don't think there was a shit sequel. Like one of my favorite lines that I still quote every now and then, which was the biggest twist. Now, I know people might be like, oh, I saw it coming. But again, if I go back, you take me back to that time when I watched that film for the first time, coming off of the first one, and that moment when Will Benson, and he was like Ben's son, that is like the best line ever. That was such a, oh my god, big moment. And when they're like spinning the globe and then they realize that it's not the capital of Brazil. Like, I didn't know that when I was watching the film. Like, I realized that with the film, and it really brought me in. And I love horror films that can do that, whether they are the teen slashers or they are some psychological thriller or supernatural. It doesn't really matter to me. The story is what matters. And I actually think I Know What You Did Last Summer actually had one of the best written stories of all of the franchises. You know, some of them are really like just very generic, very basic. And I thought the whole Ben Willis, you know, killing David Egan like on the same night that then he gets almost murdered. I just thought it was such a cool, twisted, intricate story. And I loved everything about that film. I really did, except for Sarah Michelle Gellar's character being murdered. I hated that. Like Helen, damn it, you were so close. But besides that, I loved that film. I really did. And Jennifer Love Hewitt was awesome in it. She really stood out. They brought her back for a second. They brought back Freddie Prinze Jr. for a second. He really wasn't in it so much in the second film, but he pulled it off in the end. He came in clutch at the end, and he was, you know, they were this like duo again. And then, you know, you see it sort of ending with them in this house and living their best life, finally together, and, you know, there's something there. There's someone under the bed, I think it was. And it was Ben, right? But, you know, we struggled with her having nightmares. So there were certain things in the first film where you questioned, was it real? Was it in her imagination? So, you know, like the guy in the boot, I've said this before, you know, was he actually there? Because how did he disappear and everything was gone? Although, why would she also see him? Because she didn't know he died. So there was a lot of stuff that there were plot holes clearly that made that film the reason why some people go back and say it was a terrible film or it wasn't a classic. There are obviously things that are not very realistic, but that is a given with horror movies. And for me, the majority of things outweighed, you know, the cons basically. I really adored that film. It's one of my favorites. It's in general as a horror film. It is my favorite horror franchise film, and I just really love the idea of them coming back. I don't know how that's going to look. Now, obviously they're going to be married. I'm assuming they're going to have children, right? So this is going to clearly be time has passed. This is going to be like what 20 years later. I don't know how many years later, but it's definitely going to be like they're going to be, you know, if well into their family life, I'm assuming, and probably haven't had any issues for the longest time, and everything's settled and everything's fine, and then all of a sudden there will be a letter. There will be that card, that famous card. It's going to be somewhere, and it's going to say, I know something. I don't know what it's going to say. What is it going to say, you guys? Is it going to say, I know what you did last summer? I still know. I'll always know. Because again, we had that third film that was, let's just pretend to forget it. Like, let's try and forget about it. That was completely not connected to the other films. That was the um, studios trying to make a buck and try to keep the, you know, the buck rolling and basically do it with a different cast. And it was absolutely terrible. I think it went straight to video back then, and nobody talks about it. So, not to say that some of the actors in there I didn't enjoy, but it was a terrible film, and it was a terrible like play on what the originals did, really, because I really love those movies again. So this would basically, I am assuming, gonna be it's basically gonna be straight from number two, and then 20 years after number two with the original cast, Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr. So we're going to see what is going to happen with these two characters. Now, my theories, I have to, of course, speculate. So, what are my fan theories of who the killer is going to be and how this is all going to come about? Well, again, I assume they're going to be married with children at this point. Their children will be, what, like maybe early teens, probably, right? I don't know what Ray's going to be doing. Is he still on the boat? Like, and Julie, what is Julie doing? Is she a teacher? I feel like she could be a teacher. Don't ask me why. I just feel like they're going to put her in this really sweet, innocent role again because, you know, Julie was that character. So I have a feeling maybe it's something like that. There's going to be this home life, maybe on a little, like, cottage, villagey area and by the ocean with Ray and his boats. Who knows? But I feel like it's going to be that and it's going to start off and it's going to be great. And I'm just going to be so nostalgic watching that, reminiscing. But then obviously things are going to take a turn for the worst. The tide will turn. So, who do I think is going to be the killer bringing this franchise back? Well, there are definitely many theories that it could be. There are different possibilities. One possibility, now we know that Ben died, right? So, Ben definitely died in the second one. He was shot in the grave, he was definitely dead. We know that Will, Ben's son, died. So tongue tied every time I try to say that. We know that Will dies because Ben murders his own son, unfortunately. Um, so they're both dead. We know that the wife is dead, right? That was in the story in the second one. We were told that the wife and I think the children were murdered or were found in pieces, or at least the wife was found, parts of the wife were found. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily that's there's a loophole there. There's definitely room for there to be a loophole in that because it could have maybe not been his wife. He could have had a mistress, which is why that happened. Like maybe he had a mistress and what happened was he had this other family and this other woman and maybe even had other children and his wife found out he was cheating and he went into a rage and killed her. So, Will survived. I thought that there was a boy and a girl, if I remember correctly, when telling the story, that there was a boy, little boy and a girl. So, is there still a daughter around? I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember 100% on that story. But you think I would know because I've seen it so many damn times. But there possibly will be a daughter that is, Will's sister. It could also be Ben's mistress wife's daughter if there was another family and or son. There could be two killers, we don't know. Um, there's also the possibility that Will, who was murdered, had a girlfriend or had a wife himself. Now, I don't know if he did, but there is definitely that possibility. So we've got Ben's Ben's mistress slash, you know, other children. Then we have Will's maybe girlfriend, because that's definitely a possibility. So it always has to come back to the original. It has to be connected to Ben and that storyline and somebody who wants to take revenge on Julie for basically destroying their family, which is kind of what they did, right? Or at least that's how it was perceived by Ben Willis. So it's got to be someone connected to Ben in one way or another. Besides that, who else do I think it could possibly be that could come back? And how would they come back also? I really like the idea of bringing it in with a female character. We haven't had a female killer yet. That could be really cool. So I'm very much leaning towards a girlfriend of Will's, but that kind of seems like it might fall flat a little bit. I think what would be better is, of course, the Scream 3 scenario, where we bring in a long lost child that was fathered by Ben and has to seek revenge and somehow finds out. And that would probably be the best way that they could do it. Yes, it's a cliche, it's been done, but it was done well. I liked Scream 3. I think it was done well. And I think if you're talking legacies, it needs to be a legacy character, which would be, of course, a child. So, in my opinion, that's probably the route they will probably go. I don't know how it will be introduced. Like, at this point, if this was another child of Ben's, she would probably be the same age as Julie right now. So, I don't know how I feel about that. Like, I kind of want a younger killer. I liked Will's character. I thought that was a cool spin. We had an older character, the father, then we had the son and father team really, but like that was really cool. I enjoyed that. And I really love that twist of having Will there playing this sweet, cute, innocent guy, possible love interest for Julie, and then you just it twists and he turns and it's like you find out he's been the murderer all along and working with Ben, who's still alive. Like, that was awesome. I really liked it. Maybe not everything about that film was great, but I liked that concept. So if they can pull off that writing, that would be really awesome. I believe Kevin Williamson wrote on that along with Scream when he did that back in the day. So, that's why those two films really feel like they're in the same vein. And I would really love to see something written really well. I wanted to capture the essence of I Know What You Did Last Summer. Again, with Scream 5, I didn't feel that way. I felt like it was trying way too hard to pay homage to Wes Craven when it just sort of took things away from the original um, story and the characters and all that stuff. So I want this film to, yes, bring back the originals, but bring them back in a really good way. Don't sideline them like Scream 5 did with Sydney and Gale. Bring them into it, have it be a family affair, H2O it. Like, that's what I want to see. That's what I want. I want a combination of Scream 3, maybe the first I Know What You Did Last Summer, and maybe Halloween H2O. Like, if you could mash all that up and make a film, that would be great. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I hope that that's what it's like. I can't wait to see if this deal goes through. I assume it will because, these stars probably want to come back. for the paycheck, but of course for the fans as well, I hope. I really adored those characters, especially Julie. I would love to see what she's up to. So I think that Jennifer Love Hewitt will come back for it. And I think if she signs up, I think Freddie's definitely going to sign up. So I, he's getting back into movies again now. He's coming back. So I think it's going to be really great. I can't wait to see it. I just hope it's done well. Let me know if you guys are excited about this as much as I am. Like I said, it's one of my favorites. So I'm definitely keen for this. And I will see you guys soon. Bye.